I want to ask Anthony, because he spoke about a one-state solution in his speech tonight, and I'd like to ask you to elaborate further why, you know, this right and wrong, and why the one-state solution is the only solution.
You know, again, the good news about my speech tonight and our conversation right now is I'm not a politician, so I'm able to talk to you with very clear language, without any equivocation, based on grounded analysis and objectivity around the security of the Jewish people and the security of the Jewish state and the sanctity of the sanctuary that's been created for the Jewish people. So for me, when I step back and look at it, we have to put away the idealism of a two-state solution and talk about the realism of protecting innocent life in the state of Israel. And so you really can't have a two-state solution if one of those states is going to be a state sponsor of terrorism. Moreover, there are so many entanglements as it relates to the terrorist organizations like Hezbollah and Hamas and the leadership around the authority that it would be nonsensical to jeopardize the Jewish people in that way. So for me, this is about security first. It's about putting the Israeli citizens who are innocent out of harm's way. And so I think it's just a very clear matter that we can only have a one-state solution if we want to preserve the things that are super important in the West as it relates to all of our liberties and our culture.
So Alan Dershowitz spoke about the Obama years, and Dershowitz spoke as a Democrat, and he used some very strong language about President Obama when it came to Resolution 2334 in the last month of the Obama presidency, where they declared roads to Hebrew University illegal and occupied territory, so-called occupied territory. So what are your thoughts on that subject? I thought it was a brilliant speech.
Well, I mean, what Professor Dershowitz said was he said it would be an ignoramus that would have to think that given the 1947 UN resolutions. But I think more importantly, I think the very, very good news is that administration is in the past, that policy is in the past, and the American policy now is grounded and coincident now to what the proper Israeli policy is. And so the good news is that it's moving in the right direction. I think the placement of the embassy, where, and Professor Dershowitz said this as a Democrat, where it should be and where it should have been in 1947 in Jerusalem, is a major, major statement. And I think what it does is it removes a lot of the things off the table that have been on the table in this sort of wobbly manner. And so one of the great things about President Trump, and certainly Prime Minister Netanyahu, is that they know that there can be no equivocation in the face of evil. There can be no appeasement. There is a black and white line as it relates to matters of protection and security and the sanctity of life. And we've learned throughout history that when we try to negotiate with evil, or we back up, when good men and women back up into the face of evil, more evil occurs. And so I do believe that we're going in the right direction today. But yes, President Dershowitz was very critical of the Obama administration.
Yeah, you mentioned the embassy move, which was a monumental move. Probably, you know, it's probably going to be, certainly in the first 4-year term of the president, probably the biggest move he made. I mean, if he pulls together the nuke deal with North Korea, I'll say that certainly is the biggest. But this move was big. And
well, I think it's also the precursor, Joe, to an eventual redrafting of a resolution with Iran. And as Ronald Reagan said in 1982, that we're witnessing the final pages of the communist story in the Soviet Union being written, and that communism is about to enter the ash heap of history. I predict that the Islamic theocracy of Iran, we are witnessing the final pages of that history as well. And so the movement by President Trump and the movement by the Prime Minister Netanyahu, directionally are going to tip that balance the same way Reagan and Pope John Paul II and Margaret Thatcher helped to bring down the Iron Curtain. And so again, in the face of evil, you want good men and women standing up for what is right, drawing a line, and using the force of their very good hearts, but also their steel backbones to stand there, to reject evil and put evil where it needs to go, which is asleep forever. So I think you're going to see peace and denuclearization of the North Korean peninsula, and you will see an eventual de-radicalization of Iran. And just remember that the Chinese, that's in their interest as well, because they want to build that infrastructure across creating effectively a new Silk Road, and they need more harmony and less dissension in the Middle East, and Iran is causing almost all of it.
So one little point on the Democrats, it came up tonight. You know, Joe Wilson, Congressman Joe Wilson, said that, and it was reported in Breitbart, that he said that the Democrats were indeed invited to the embassy move and didn't show.
Well,
and I think
Joe Lieberman showed.
Joe Lieberman is, yeah, he was certainly a Democrat and an independent, but they were invited, according to Joe Wilson, and I trust Joe Wilson immensely. I mean,
well,
he's looking for bipartisan support. This wasn't it.
I think the administration obviously sent an invitation and sent a bipartisan invitation, but this is a problem now in American politics, which I disagree with. For multiple decades, the alliance with Israel and the solutions related to its safety and security were bipartisan here in the United States. And for some reason, after the Obama administration seems to have politicized and made partisan something that shouldn't be made partisan in the country. It should be a uniform and absolutist fact that the United States and Israel, there should be no daylight in that relationship. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, that relationship is sacrosanct for so many different reasons, but the main one has to do with individual liberty and the spirit of protecting the Western canon of individual liberty, which starts with the protection of Israel, and Israel as a sanctuary for the Jewish people. So I really hope on a going forward basis that there's more bipartisanship injected into the relationship so that we can go back to that time when there was that bipartisan harmony as it related to Israel.
Correct. We hope so.
What do you order?
Well, this is a gift to the President of the United States from the people of State Road.
And it's a very heavy gift, so I'm glad that Dr. Joe is holding the gift. Okay, so I could think, because I can't do two things at once.
No, Anthony held this for quite a long time, and the truth is he visited State Road in November, and he stood in front of the larger version of this menorah, and I think Rabbi Fendel's statement that the Jewish people have to be a light unto the nations. The menorah is the way to cast that light. You know, we turn missiles and rockets into a worthwhile mitzvah, into a worthwhile deed, and this is what this represents, but it's transformation.
To me, as a non-Jew, this is a metaphor of Jewish survival. And so there's been so many persecutors of the Jewish religion and Judaism, and yet they've all ended up on the ash heap of history. And that's another prediction, okay? The Jewish state and the Jewish people will be here long after the people that have fired these rockets.
Amen.